Hey guys, Mitch Fitzpatrick here. I'm an ELR shooter and I'm an engineer here at Applied Ballistics LLC. And I've got Francis Cologne with me, and we're going to talk to you today about personal drag models. We'll refer to those as PDMs. And mainly we want to get into, what is a personal drag model and, how does it benefit you as a shooter? Because it's something both of us use quite extensively in our competitive shooting careers.
I'm Francis Cologne. I'm a precision rifle competitor. I shoot for Team MDT and have been competing for about 2 years now. I also use a lot of Applied Ballistics products, so that's why I'm here today, to help talk a little bit about the PDM and my experience with them.
So a PDM, or a personal drag model, is essentially a custom drag model for your specific rifle and bullet. And what I mean by that is not just your specific bullet model, because that's what a CDM actually is, but a PDM accounts for your specific lot of bullets fired out of your barrel with your specific rifling pattern, barrel wear, launch condition out of a suppressor, muzzle brake, just a regular crown, anything like that. And so if you're not familiar with what a custom drag model is, it is a representation of the drag of your bullet or a bullet using a Mach CD curve. And essentially Mach is like your velocity related to the speed of sound, and the CD is the coefficient of drag of the bullet. And that's what the ballistic software uses to model your trajectory and give you a firing solution. So the more accurate that table of drag coefficients is, the more accurate your solution is going to be. And so a BC represents a drag model, but it's a standardized shape that doesn't account for the differences in how a given bullet design flies as related to that standard. So that's where we go to a custom drag model, which gets the shape correct for a specific bullet design. However, there are still differences from lot to lot, even from the same manufacturer. Some manufacturers are better than others, but there are drag differences from one lot to the next, and also from one barrel to the next, depending on the rifling pattern. The age of the barrel would be like the round count, so how worn out your barrel is. All those have an effect. So in the way that the CDM is better than a regular BC, like a G7, the PDM is then better than the CDM because it accounts for all of the little nuanced details of your specific rifle system. And that's why it can give you a noticeable edge over the competition at a match. Anything from PRS, where you're shooting, closest PRS target's like 300, 400 yards?
Generally 300.
Yeah. All the way out to, it becomes very critical at ELR distances when you start talking, 2,000, 3,000 yards. Those little differences in the drag model are important.
And we use G7s now for most of our boat tail shaped bullets,
Yep.
but G1 could be applicable in certain cases for like a flat tail
Yep.
or a flat base style
Yep.
bullet. But the PDM is agnostic to that. It's that bullet, the exact drag,
Exactly.
no matter what. So it's not which one's a better fit. It's actually what that bullet is doing through the air.
Exactly. Yep. There's no predictive element to it in regards to the velocities that we can measure a bullet at. It is exactly how your bullet flies out of your rifle. Francis, as a competitive shooter, has used PDMs quite extensively in the last year, and it's helped him quite a bit in a number of matches. Tell us about how that's really helped you, Francis.
So I got my first PDMs this season, and in running the PDM, before I go into exactly what the PDM has done for me, let's talk about a little bit about what, as a shooter, what you had to do before this technology really came into the market.
Yep.
I would have sent dozens, if not hundreds of rounds over the course of a day with a full day committed at the range to verify my muzzle velocity, verify drops at different distances, then go back into a calculator and reverse that back into a BC with a matching muzzle velocity that's close to what it needed, or what it was coming out, say, from a chronograph, to try to get all of my ballistic tables to line up at various distances. That's pretty tedious. I mean, if you're shooting at 300, 500, 700, 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 yards to get all of the data, there's some error in shooting that long that can also happen. The temps changing. The unique part about a PDM is all that changes instantly. Instead of having to fire hundreds of rounds, I went to the range and in 10 rounds past the radar, able to get exact muzzle velocity, a predictable BC that's specific to my lot of bullets. And when I went and tested that same information at long range, I was sub-10th. And I think this is the really unique part about a PDM. There's so much less guessing involved. You know, one of the things I see a lot at matches and with the matches I run, new shooters, trying to figure out where's my data wrong because they have something that doesn't line up. And when things don't line up, it can be really frustrating. But when you get a PDM, being able to simply punch in a yardage, collect your atmospherics, and instantly have a solution that gets you to within 1/10 or better, or sometimes 2/10, depending on the precision of your rifle, to be within your usable window instantly is worth its weight in gold. So, I mean, just as an anecdote, this year when I got my PDM, I was able to take that very same data and win that match using verifiable information. I never felt like I was off target vertically. We're really chasing in PRS very tight windows of vertical dispersion, so we can take one element out of the equation, right? Wind is always changing, elevation shouldn't. And what I found was that my elevation was always sub-10th consistent, so I could dial some number and never be more than a half a tenth high or half a tenth low outside of good trigger presses. Looking at two PDMs that I've even got here, this is actually the same chamber, two different barrels, one with 1,000 rounds, one with 100 rounds. And in testing these two side by side, I wanted to understand what differences I could expect from a mid-life barrel to a brand new barrel. And what jumped out at me right away is that my BC was slowly coming down as the barrel got older, whereas a new barrel had a slightly higher, call it the lower end BC numbers for variation. It had better, tighter variation on the newer barrel, a little bit more variation on the older barrel. Mm-hmm. So I know when to expect a barrel if it starts getting a little vertical. I know that the barrel could be in a place where it needs to be cleaned and or needs to go to the end of its service life. So
yeah, and that's actually something we've learned through a lot of lab testing as well. And I have that conversation with shooters quite a bit at these events because most bullets have very defined, I shouldn't say very defined, but pretty typical amounts of variation. And so for like a Berger 105 hybrid, we know about what the BC variation should be. And so when we interact with shooters and we have a shooter shoot a PDM at a match, I can look at those numbers and I say, oh, you have more variation than I would expect for that bullet. I can kind of enter in a conversation with that shooter, and before you know it, I find out they've got 3,000 rounds on their barrel and it's on its way out. And I can, educate them and clue them in on the fact that as your barrel wears, the first thing we notice with the barrel being shot out is increased BC variation, which is really, again, we're trying not to use BCs because the PDM is more accurate over your entire trajectory, but we still use BCs as a single number that we can use to represent drag, particularly when we're comparing variation. So that's why we're referencing BCs when we're talking about variation. But point being, there are a number of benefits to shooters that even go beyond just the actual increased precision in the trajectory with better drag data. Like you said, the better muzzle velocities. We give very accurate muzzle velocities the day before a match, which is very valuable. I've even used that myself a number of times at ELR matches when we do PDMs. And then also the drag variation. That's a big thing that can point towards the state that your barrel is in, or we can also use that to diagnose other problems, potentially with the bullet you're shooting. We can sometimes identify twist rate issues depending on the conditions. There's quite a bit we can diagnose about your system that you get access to when you come shoot a PDM with us and get to sit and have that conversation with us. Because as Francis has experienced, what we do is we have 5 people shoot a PDM, and then we have a small group discussion with those 5 people so that you get a really good understanding of what's going on and what your information is telling you.
Another aspect of this, we've been talking mainly about competition use. How is this affecting competition? Mm-hmm. But I also, as a hunter, one of the huge benefits of a PDM in a rifle that we don't shoot that frequently, we can generally buy, say, 100, 200, or 300 rounds of ammo or bullets and load 400 to 500 rounds, that's enough for a hunting rifle to last for tons of seasons. I mean, all the seasons, unless you're a super avid hunter hunting in multiple states. If I had a PDM, like this barrel's 100 rounds, this would be at 100 rounds about where I would put a rifle into hunting use and say it's about ready to go. Having a PDM means I now have verifiable data that will stay with that rifle for the life of that barrel. That's always going to be applicable going on my long range hunts if I'm ever trying to take a deer. And also, frankly, knowing that if the variability on your BC is high, and this is a little complicated, but if you start getting into the type of hunting where you are taking a longer shot, you can actually identify where the variability in your BC, your SD, or your speeds aren't going to allow you to take an ethical shot because it falls outside of the window of dispersion that you would need to make a clean kill kind of guaranteed or a clean harvest. That's identifiable from this information. And using some of the other tools that AB's created, like the WES calculator, you know where that limit is for this upcoming hunt. An antelope or a coon deer is different than, say, an elk or a bear, where our margin for error is very small on small targets. I can tell you exactly how far I'd be willing to take a shot based on this information under different conditions, the wind notwithstanding. That's something you have to judge on the fly.
I think the big picture here and a good summary for the benefits that you get with a PDM is if you come shoot a PDM with us at a match, you're essentially getting to experience a lot of what we do here at AB in this lab on a daily basis. We're really bringing a lot of our lab capabilities to the shooters at a venue where they can come up and see the data, get data on their system. They've got some time to interact and discuss with us. And typically we're there for the duration of the match, and we're there interacting with shooters. If you don't get your question in on PDM day, we've typically got people around the other days of the match. And we're really trying to bring a lot of the knowledge from our lab to you guys, because that helps you use our product. It helps you hit targets. And at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, is hitting more targets and hitting them further away. You guys might be wondering, how do you go about getting a PDM? Well, the way we get PDMs for shooters is we have a mobile lab, the Applied Ballistics mobile lab, and we take that lab to shooting matches, a lot of PRS matches, ELR matches, and stuff like that. And that allows us to bring our radar system out and set up on the range, typically on like a zeroing day or a sight-in day, typically like the day before the match. And we're able to set up, get all the equipment out, and have a certain number of competitors, typically 50 or 60, lay down and shoot, and we record the data. They shoot 10 shots, and we run our software. We have software that distills down all of the radar data and creates the PDM, and that goes into our library that we push kind of at the end of the day there, so that you can the shooters can access it on their AB devices, like the Kestrel or Garmin devices, Bushnell, SIG, all of those.
Phone.
Yeah, the phone app. You can get it on the phone app as well. And we also give the shooter a printout, similar to what Francis has here. And the printout essentially gives you all of your muzzle velocity information for those 10 shots, and all of your, it does give you BC information, so that you actually have a comparative number, because we actually do use the BCs to compare like the drag variation from shot to shot. So that's another data point you get. And then, like I was saying, the actual PDM itself, the personal drag model, is kind of created, like I almost want to say, behind the scenes, and it gets uploaded into our library to access on all the devices. But yeah, so the mobile lab itself is a big like toy hauler trailer that we pull around with the Applied Ballistics truck. And we have a schedule, and so as matches reach out to us and they want us to come set up at their match, we put them on the schedule, and then before the match we'll put a sign up out there, and you'll be able to sign up and come get a PDM. Thanks for tuning in, guys, joining us and learn more about PDMs, personal drag models. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us through Instagram or Facebook. It's Applied Ballistics LLC. You can reach out through our support email, which is support@appliedballisticsllc.com, or through our marketing email, which is marketing@appliedballisticsllc.com. Francis, I want to thank you for joining us, And
Thank you for having me.
yeah, for sure. And going over, how they've helped you and, how you've benefited from PDMs. And, even beyond PDMs, if you guys want to learn more about ballistics in general, any ballistics, any facet of ballistics and long range shooting, we have a number of books that we've put together with tons of, just an absolute wealth of knowledge for long range shooting. And you can get those on our website, which is appliedballisticsllc.com. Thanks for tuning in.